shit, let me delete this. Oh shoot. I had to turn my phone off. Y'all let me know if we live on the other end. I'm turning my phone back on so I can go on here and see. Y'all let me know if we live. Look like we are on.
Yeah, we on.
All right. So let me go back. Let me go on my phone real quick. All right. Yep. All right. First, I want to say, hold on. This still doing this. Oh, I know what I need to do. I muted. All right. First, I want to say, ETM Hotep, Dua Aku, Dua Netcha, Fatmu Alafiye. Hold on, y'all. Gallery. Okay. I just stopped doing what I was doing. Hold on. Hold on, y'all. Okay, it's on gallery view. I don't know what. Okay. Why is it? Okay. All right. I'm trying to fix this. Y'all give me just a second, man. I'm trying to fix this gallery view. Let's see. Yeah, nope, that ain't what I'm trying to do. All right, but I don't want it to be. We'll see how it turn out. Unpin. Okay, there we go. Well, hell, I got the tip pin now. Hold on, y'all. Unpin. Hell, I don't want nobody pin. Okay. I see some tip thing up here. First, I want to say ETM Hotep, Dua Aku, Dua Netra, Fatmo Alafiye, Fatmo Iwa Pele, Majuba Iba E Gungun, Majuba Iba E Gungun, Majuba Iba E Lakba, Majuba Iba E Lakba. I always want to give honor and praises to the ancestors. Without the ancestors, we wouldn't be here. We are our ancestors. I also want to give honor and praises to the true and living elders according to African traditions. Y'all know who y'all are. Welcome back to Kofi Pieside TV. We got a nice presentation for you today by our brothers Sutek. Y'all help us share the show. And so once I start the video real quick, I'll go ahead and start sharing the show a little bit, but also help share the show. We want to get it out there as many people as possible. For our good brother, brother Sutek. Before I even start the intro video, man, I got brother Satepan Ra Mariaman, of course, brother Sutek, because this is his show today. Also got Vasa Nicolo Gullah on the panel. Any of y'all got anything, man, before we jump into it? Before Sutek jump into it?
Yeah, man, I'm excited, man. Excited to see this presentation.
I don't see too many people touch on the Arab, so yeah, it's be nice to see what the brother bring from that angle. So yeah, I'm ready to tune in just like the audience is. So peace.
I know Vasa said he had wasn't too far from the house. Let me go ahead. I'm gonna share my screen real quick, and then I'll start sharing the show. Let me know if my screen sharing. Yeah, I see it on the other end.
You sure?
All right, hold on. All right. Get this shit out here. Now this thing here. Hold on, y'all. An application is not responsive. The program may respond again if you wait. Do not end this process. Hold on, y'all. Give me just a second, y'all. We're having some technical difficulties. All right. Hold on. I don't know why it's freezing up on my end. Hold on, y'all. Let me see if I can unshare and then go back. Boy, yeah. All right. That makes me want to read. Yeah, man. Ain't sure, be sure. Y'all bear with me just a second, y'all. Just bear with me. Bear with me. All right, and now it's going right on past. All right.
Urban supreme picture of creation. When man becomes possessor of the knowledge of himself, he becomes master of his environment, the captain of his own ship, the director of his own destiny, the accomplisher of his own ends. Man should understand himself because man is full of knowledge, and this knowledge is a gift of nature. When Mother Nature created man, she deprived him of nothing. He was given the faculty of understanding all things around him. This faculty for understanding has not been taken away from him. None of his senses have been taken away from him. So there is no excuse for the black man.
Red in my team, red, black, and green. Queens and kings, salute, now scream, I should. I'm red in my team, red, black, and green. Queens and kings, salute, now scream, I should. I should.
All right. Let me turn my camera out, bro. Sutek. If you want to wait a minute, man, while we finish sharing the show, man, before you jump into it, man, we can. You still on, bro, Sutek? I can't. Satep, Sutek still on here?
I'm in here. I see Satep. I don't see Sutek though. Looks like he's just now coming back in though.
Yeah, I was about to say he just popped back in.
Okay.
You know, peace to the audience and peace to the chat.
Sutek, you back in here?
Yeah, I'm back in.
Yeah, I was telling you, man. You want to wait just a few minutes, man, or you want to go ahead and jump right on in? And when they come in, I'm sharing the show now.
Well, I was sharing it while you was playing the video, and while I was waiting on us to start. So it just depends, man. If y'all want to give it a couple minutes, I'm ready to go whenever.
Yeah, we'll give it about 2 minutes, man, and we'll start, man. And those that's in, I can't see nothing right now because I'm sharing. And those that's coming in the chat, y'all share the show. Help us share the show if you don't mind.
Hey, Sutek, for the audience that's in here now, if you're not gonna be sharing it, just prepping, how about giving a brief synopsis of what you're gonna talk about and what inspired you to bring out this particular subject matter? That way we don't have all the dead air.
Okay, cool like Brother Satep said, man, I don't really see too many people touching on this subject, and that's a lane of study that I started to go down. I wanted to learn about Islam in Africa and the Arabs and all that because that's I feel like we give them a pass. You know, we came here and dealt with Christianity, so I understand why we go so hard on Christianity, but we can't never forget that before Christianity did what they did to us, that Islam and these Arabs, they did the same thing, if not worse. So that's just something I wanted to touch on. A lot of people, I've never really seen anybody in the so-called conscious community deal with this information. So that's a big reason why I'm doing it. And what I'll be touching on is the Arab thought, the mind state, the concepts that they put on us, what they thought about us. Basically just the ideology of the pale Arab against the Black African. I'll say pale Arab, and I'll deal with that. I'll touch more on that in the presentation, but I say that for a reason.
Okay. Is your material focused on the continent itself on this subject, or will you be talking on slave routes that went out of that?
I won't really be dealing with the slave routes. I'll be more dealing with the concepts and the ideology. Okay. But I will be going into Arabia. I'll be going into Africa, and I'll be going into Iberia, because Africans were in Arabia and obviously in Africa and Iberia too with these Arabs. So we share several places with them. So I want to try to capture what Arabs in the Arabian Peninsula thought. I want to try to capture what Arabs in Africa thought and Arabs in the Iberian Peninsula.
Awesome. So to the listening audience, if y'all are still sharing at the moment, now you have something to kind of lure more participants into the chat room with us as Sutek builds on this.
Yeah, we can jump on into it, man, if you're ready.
Yeah, I'm ready. Let's do it. So, peace to all the family, peace to the chat, peace to the panel, Brother Vasa, Brother Kofi, Brother Satep, Brother Sean, wherever he may be. Peace to everybody that'll see this later. My presentation is on the Arab racist thought of the African in medieval times, which will be dealing with around the 7th and 7th to 8th century to the 14th to 15th century. So, as I said, I'll be dealing with the concepts, the ideologies, not so much of the slave trade. I touch on it just a little bit, but this presentation is really not about that. It's more of what they thought of us. So I'm ready whenever you're ready, go.
Oh, I'm ready. You want me to go to the next slide?
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so this is kind of like a small introductory story about a ruler of Egypt and a black man. So we'll get into it. A story is told concerning the Arab conquest of Egypt, of how a certain Arab leader called Ubadah ibn al-Samit took a party of Muslims to meet the Mokakis. And the Mokakis was the ruler of Egypt at that time. Ubadah, the chronicler tells us, was black. And when the Arabs came to the Mokakis and entered his presence, Ubadah led them. The Mokakis was frightened by his blackness and said to them, "Get this man away from me and bring another to talk to me." The Arabs insisted that Ubadah was the wisest, best, and noblest among them, and was their appointed leader, whom they obeyed and whose judgment they deferred. The Mokakis asked, "How can you be content that a black man should be foremost among you? It is more fitting that he should be below you." "Indeed, no," they replied. "For though he is black, as you see, he is still the foremost among us in position, in precedence, and intelligence, and in wisdom, for blackness is not despised among us." The Mokakis asked Ubadah to speak gently to him, because speaking harshly would increase the dread already inspired by his blackness. So you can go to the next slide. That's just basically giving a brief example of what we're going to be dealing with. So let's get a working definition of racism. What is racism? Racism is the belief in the superiority of one race over another, which often results in discrimination and prejudice towards people based on their race or ethnicity. The use of the term racism does not easily fall under one single definition. The ideology underlying racism often includes the idea that humans can be subdivided into distinct groups that are different due to their social behavior and their innate capacities, as well as the idea that they can be ranked as inferior or superior. Historical examples of institutional racism include the Holocaust, the apartheid regime in South Africa, slavery and segregation in the United States, and slavery in Latin America. Racism was also an aspect of the social organization of many colonial states and empires. So I just wanted to give y'all a working definition of racism before I get deep into it, because we need to know that. You can go to the next slide. Okay. In current American usage, which has now spread to most other countries, the word race is used exclusively to denote such major divisions as white, black, Mongolian, and the like. It is no longer applied to national, ethnic, or cultural entities such as the English, the Irish, the Germans or Slavs, or even the Japanese, who are seen as being part of a much larger racial grouping found in East Asia. In this modern sense, race was of minor importance in antiquity. Like every other society known to human history, the ancient Middle Eastern peoples harbored all kinds of prejudices and hostilities against those whom they regarded as other, which were primarily those who spoke another language or professed another religion. The ancients, like the rest of humanity, believed foreigners to be inferior. So, what we call race today is a different concept of what would have been race in ancient or medieval times. What we call, or what they call race, would have been looked at as what we call ethnicity today. So, as you see, the definition of race changed through time. And everybody in ancient times seen outsiders as different, and they also seen outsiders as inferior. Everybody wanted to be the best. Everybody feel like they superior. I mean, that's just how it is today. For the most part, is how it is back then. Well, you can go to the next slide. Black Africans were the earliest type of slaves known to Arabs and were the latest imported into the Arab Islamic Middle East. One of the very first Black Africans known to have been in slavery in the Arabian Peninsula and to have become one of the first converts to Islam was the Abyssinian called Bilal, who was owned and then freed by Abu Bakr, the Prophet Muhammad's father-in-law and later successor, to whom he gave his freed slave, who then accepted the Prophet's message and was given the position of Muezzin, which is the caller to prayer, by Muhammad. Soon after North Africa was occupied by Arab Muslim armies in the late 7th century, Black Africans were traded over the Sahara and brought by Arab merchants as slaves, a practice which continued down to the early 20th century. Next slide. All right, the evidence for the growth of anti-Black prejudice comes in the main from two groups of sources. The first of these is literary, especially poetry and anecdote. Several Arabic poets of the pre-Islamic and early Islamic periods are described as Black. Some of them, mostly pre-Islamic, were Arabs of swarthy complexion, and others were mixed Arab and African parentage. For the latter, and still more for the pure Africans, Blackness was an affliction. And I want to point out something that I read. Where is it? The pre-Islamic and early Islamic periods, a lot of these Arabs were described as Black. Some of them were Arabs of swarthy complexion. So they were not African. There were Arabs that were dark skinned. A lot of times we see dark skin and automatically connected to Africa, or if a person has dark skin, he's African or a descendant of Africans. That don't necessarily mean that. It's dark skinned people all across the world. I just wanted to make that clear. You can go to the next slide. The Arabs had Black Africans living among them. Okay, the Arabs had Black Africans living among them from before the days of Islam. Mainly, it would appear as slaves. Some of the African women bore children with Arab fathers, but the males among them seem to have had some trouble being accepted as full members of the tribe, despite the weight given to patrilineal descent. the sons of African mothers and Arab fathers, as well as slaves who had been given their freedom, were or became thoroughly Arabized in language and culture, and sought to participate with quote unquote purebred Arabs on an equal footing. So those dark Arabs that were of mixed Arab and African parentage were seen as lesser, and they would try to get the same rights and get the same respect that these so-called purebred Arabs would get. Okay, where did I stop at? They were often to find, however, that their skin color stood in the way. Some took up the art of poetry, the quintessential Arab medium of artistic expression. These poets were often known as the ravens of the Arabs because of their black color. Ravens were traditionally considered bad omens and were especially associated with the parting of lovers. Next slide. These lines are attributed to Nusaib ibn Rabah, who was very conscious of his birth and color, which he endured many insults. On one occasion, the great Arab poet Qutair said mockingly, "I saw Nusaib astray among men. His color was that of cattle. You can tell him by his shining blackness. Even if he be oppressed, he has the dark face of an oppressor." Challenged by his friends to reply, Nusaib refused with dignity. For one thing, he said, God had given him the gift of poetry to use for good. He would not misuse it for satire. For another, all he has done is call me black, and he speaks truth. Then Nusaib said of his own color, blackness does not diminish me, as long as I have this tongue and this stout heart. Some are raised up by means of their lineage. The verses of my poems are my lineage. How much better a keen-minded, clear-spoken black man than a mute white. But all the same, if I am jet black, musk too is very dark, and there is no medicine for the blackness of my skin. So I just wanted to show an unapologetic black man among the Arabs. You can go to the next slide. Another type of information on racial attitudes may be found in religious literature, specifically that which by apt quotation seeks to condemn racial prejudice and discrimination. During the centuries which followed the death of the Prophet, pious Muslims collected vast numbers of hadiths. And hadiths are basically for anybody that don't know, they are the utterances of the Prophet Muhammad. It would tell you in the Quran, it says to be as the Prophet, but to know how to be as the Prophet, you must read the hadiths, because that is the traditions and the things that were done and said by the Prophet Muhammad. A very large proportion of these are certainly spurious, which is basically saying they're false. A number of traditions in hadiths deal with questions of race and color. There are some which specifically condemn one or another race. Next slide.
Wait, hold on. My mic ain't My mic open ain't bothering you, is Sutet.
Nah, you good.
I muted though.
Okay. The resulting attitude of this concept towards the non-Arabs in general and towards the dark skin in particular is expressed in 1,000 ways in the documents, literature, and the art that have come down to us from the Islamic Middle Ages. This literature, and especially popular literature, depicts the black man in the form of hostile stereotypes as a demon in fairy tales, as a savage in stories of travel and adventure, or commonly as a lazy, stupid, evil smelling, and lecherous slave. This is what they thought about the African. The evidence of literature is confirmed by art. In Arab, Persian, and Turkish paintings, blacks frequently appear sometimes as mythological figures of evil, sometimes as primitives or performing some other menial task as units in the palace or in the household. Now, I'm gonna pause for a second to say a lot of these images, these retrospective paintings of our brothers that the Moors be showing, the paintings from the 18th, 17th, 18th, 19th century, where you might have a black man in Spain in front of a mosque, or washing a white lady, or sweeping the floor, or bringing some tea. You know what I mean? And they use that to say that, look, we rule Spain. No, this is black Africans doing, at the bottom of the bottom, doing menial tasks, doing the things that the Arabs didn't want to do themselves. So you just have to pay attention to that. Every time they show those paintings, especially from Spain, of black people in turbans dressed like Arabs and all that, pay attention to what the black people are doing. If they in the front of a mosque, he was a guard. More than likely, he was a eunuch guard. If they watching the white lady, that was their job. That was their job to do. A lot of women had that job too.
Eunuch.
They were.
You said eunuch. What's a eunuch?
A castrated man. So they'll cut the genitals off.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And make them guard the harem, which is the women basically, or they will make them guard the mosque, or they for a lot of personal servants, they would turn them into eunuchs, castrate them, cut their genitals off. That way they wouldn't fear, they thought blacks was over sexual and all that. So, by castrating them, that eliminated a lot of that. So pay attention to what these black people are doing in these paintings that they show you, which is from 300-400 years after the fact. But okay, let me see where I was at. In Arab, Persian, and Turkish paintings, blacks frequently appear sometimes as mythological figures of evil, sometimes as primitives, or performing some other menial task, or as units. That should say eunuchs, or as eunuchs in the palace or in the household. Yet, in spite of these attitudes, the resulting disabilities imposed upon men of African birth, they nevertheless managed to make a significant contribution to medieval Islamic civilization, and not only in their labor and services. Okay, you can go to the next slide. As contact with sub-Saharan Africa expanded, Arabs in the broadest sense simply labeled such populations as Sudan, meaning blacks, though peoples from some regions of Africa who were taken into the Middle East and slavery were given broad ethnic were given broad ethnic labels such as the Zanj, and the Zanj are just Southeast Bantu speakers, and the Habash are Africans from the area of the Horn of Africa, like Ethiopia and so forth. Eventually, some Arab writers made attempts to draw up an ethnography relating peoples that they encountered to some scheme of humanity that they were familiar with, initially grounded in what they viewed as religious authority. Wahb ibn Munabbih, I'm pretty sure I said that wrong, but you know what? I don't speak Arabic. A Southern Arabian of part Persian origin, is credited with the following statement: Ham, the son of Noah, was a white man, fair of face. God, mighty exalted is he, changed his color and the color of his descendants because the curse of his father. He went off and his offspring followed him, and they settled on the seashore. God increased and multiplied them, and they are the blacks. So that is the first time you hear that that reference of the blacks being cursed, being from Ham and being cursed with black skin and so forth. Next slide. Not only were black Africans thought to be the descendants of Ham through the curse of Noah, punishing Ham for observing his father's nakedness as he bathed, but it also came to be believed that in accordance with the account in the Old Testament or the Torah, the punishment made Ham and his descendants slaves of his brothers Shem and Japheth, and their descendants, i.e., the Arabs, the Europeans, and the Central Asians. So basically, this concept or this ideology was basically a reason for, or an excuse for them to morally, to be able to enslave black people and morally be okay with it. So it's in this religious doctrine. These black people were cursed. So I mean, they're naturally slaves. This is where the concept of natural slavery comes into play. And if anybody doesn't know about that concept, you can look that up. Natural slavery. What was that? In fact, in the Old Testament and Torah, the Old Testament and Torah do not say Ham was black, but Arab thinking began to equate blackness with slavery. Although the Talmud refers only to Ham, the version brought in the Midrash goes on further to say Ham that Cush came from, in reference to the blackness, that the curse did not apply to all of Ham, but only to his eldest son, Cush being sub-Saharan Africa. See, they just concocted this whole ideology to be able to enslave black people and it'd be okay with them. So you can go to the next slide. Another type of information on racial attitudes may be found in hadiths, that is to say, traditions concerning Muhammad's actions and utterances. Thus, the prophet is quoted as saying of the Ethiopian, when he is hungry, he steals. When he is sated, he fornicates. So even the prophet has something to say about the African, specifically the Ethiopian. He's calling him a thief and a fornicator. In the hadiths of Sunan and Nasai, it reads, as it was narrated by Jabir Sair, a slave came and gave his pledge to the messenger of Allah to immigrate, and the prophet did not realize that he was a slave. Then his master came looking for him. The prophet said, "Sell him to me." So he brought him for 2 black slaves, and then he did not accept the pledge of anyone after that until he had asked, "Is he a slave?" So in case nobody understood that, basically a slave came to Muhammad and asked for his blessing to leave. Muhammad, not knowing that this man is a slave, gave his blessing. So in turn, when he finds out that this man is a slave, he has to rectify the situation. He has to pay the owner of this said slave that he let go. He has to repay this man. And how does he repay him? With 2 black slaves. So take note of the fact that how black slaves were, in this situation at least, used as currency. Instead of buying him with actual currency of the time, Muhammad paid his debt in black slaves. And he paid 2 black slaves for one slave, for one other slave of another race, whatever race. It's said that this slave was an Arab, but the passage itself doesn't say that. But whatever ethnicity, whatever race this person was, he was worth 2 black slaves, just one. And I also want to note that in that hadith, it's chapter 66, and the heading, the title of that chapter is called Selling Animals for Animals of Different Amounts or Quality. So basically they're telling you that slaves were viewed as animals. Again, the heading was Selling Animals for Animals of Different Amounts or Quality. So, I mean, there you have it. I mean, it don't get no more graphic than that. Next slide. That show Prophet Muhammad trained black slaves. Another theorization of the nature of black people of Africa also characterized them as being inferior beings based on a Greek view of the climatization of the then known world and the relationship of climate to intelligence. So pay attention to this theory, which was originally a Greek theory, but the Arabs took it and remixed it to try to be some type of scientific hypothesis. This theory divided the world north of the equator into 7 latitudinal zones. The ideal being the 4th or middle zone corresponding to the Mediterranean area, while the farther one got away from this zone, the more extreme the climate became and the less civilized its inhabitants. So they laid out zones starting from the equator, because remember, it was the then known world, not the modern known world. So they started with the equator, which would have been the 7th zone, the equatorial region. And going up, they divided the world into 7 zones. And right in the middle, the 4th zone would have been the Mediterranean area, where the Arabs that came up with this, they didn't come up with it, but the Arabs that remixed this concept, this is where they was at. So this was their bright idea to say the 4th zone, right in the middle, it's not too hot, not too cold, this is where civilized people are. On the top in the first zone where the Europeans at, it's too cold up there. That's why they savages. In the 7th zone where the blacks at, it's too hot down there. So that's why they savages. We right in the 4th zone. We right in the middle. So this is where civilized beings are found because the climate is perfect. This was their thinking. The great 14th century historian Ibn Khaldun did not accept the theory of blackness being related to descendants from Ham and denied the soundness of this claim as follows. Some genealogists who had no knowledge of the true nature of beings imagined that the blacks are descendants of Ham and the sons of Noah, descendants of Ham, the sons of Noah, and that they were characterized by black color as a result of a curse put upon them by his father, Noah, which manifested itself in Ham's color and the slavery that God inflicted upon his descendants. Concerning this, they have transmitted an account arising from the legends of the storytellers. The curse of Noah upon his son is there in the Torah. No reference is made to the blackness. No reference is made there to blackness. His curse was simply that Ham's descendants should be the slaves of his brother's descendants. So Ibn Khaldun rejected the Ham, the natural, the ideology of natural slavery, that these blacks were cursed by the curse of Ham. So they are naturally slaves. They are born slaves. He wanted to identify more with the climate zone theory. So we'll finish the quote on the next slide. To attribute to the blackness of Negroes to Ham shows disregard for the nature of heat and cold and the influence they exert upon the air and upon the creatures that come into being in it. But on the other hand, Ibn Khaldun fully accepted this climate zone theory that divided the then known world into 7 zones that racial hierarchy, civility, and intelligence were based on these zones. The Mediterranean-centric theory that had long taught that extreme heat in zone 1 and extreme cold in zone 7 produced distorted and savage human beings. As one got farther away from these regions, so climate became more moderate and people more civilized. The 4th zone, which was right in the middle of the 7, and hence the most moderate in its climate and the most civilized in its inhabitants, was the Mediterranean zone. I spoke on that there. So they basically set themselves up to be the only civilized people with that concept. I mean, but we will get into, it's a problem with that concept, and we will get into that. Next slide. So this is just a visual of how that climate theory would look on a modern map. Remember, it was the then known world, so it would have started with the equatorial zone, and it would have went up. But this would, I tried to find the original map, but I couldn't find it for the life of me. But this is where a modern map of the climate zone theory would look like. So let's just say hypothetically that equatorial area, the equator, the part in red, that would have been where the Mediterranean area was. And that would have been the middle zone, which they felt were the more civilized because it was moderate in temperature. It wasn't too hot, wasn't too cold. So that's just something to. This is just a visual to try to help get the image into your mind. Next slide.
Hey, I hate to cut your bill, man. I kind of missed it. I know you was talking about one of the Arabic brothers. You know, you was talking about, I guess, the Hamitic hypotheses. You know, about the curse of Ham and then justifying we being enslaved because of the curse of Ham. Ham looked at the loins of his father. He said he's going to curse his descendants. So that is justifying why we are in slavery, according to that hypothesis. Then you went on to say something about this other Arab. He rejected that Hamitic hypotheses, but then he started to do what with the natural slavery, something with the color or the what I kind of missed that part. I'm sorry. I was on the phone, man. I'm trying to see exactly what you had said because I don't want to miss that. That's something I missed.
Well, basically, Ibn Khaldun, he rejected the natural slavery. The natural slavery ideology would be the curse of these black people they're black because of the curse of Ham. So they are natural slaves. They are born slaves. That was the curse that God put upon them, blackness. So therefore they are to be slaves. That's the concept of natural slavery. But Ibn Khaldun, he rejected that. And he went with this Greek theory and remixed it about the climate zones, about the climate zone number 4 in the middle of 7 would be the most moderate. It would be where the civilized people would be, because in zone 1, all the way at the top of the globe where the Europeans would be, it's too cold. So they're savages. That's how they thought. They just too cold up there, so they savages. In the bottom, in zone 7, where it's hot, that's where the Africans are, and they're savages because of that heat. It's too hot, so they put Ibn Khaldun was in the Mediterranean area, so he put zone 4 as the Mediterranean area. So therefore making it, okay, well, so we are the civilized people here in this Mediterranean area, and those people below us are savage because it's too hot. Those people above us are savage because it's too cold.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that was their attempt at science. Yeah, but we go to the next slide.
Are you familiar with I may not say his name right. It's like Erdahl, ERDA, I want to say FEL. He actually made a globe that remains right from that time period, like 1492, 1493, somewhere in that time. But I'm pretty sure if we did more research into it, it'll go into that as well.
Well, what's his name? What's the guy name you said?
Erdahl, if I'm saying it right. ERADEFL. I'll look it up and I'll type it in the chat.
Well, you say he created some globe, you saying?
Yeah, he made a globe right around that time frame, and there's a map of it as well.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about. I know who you're talking. I actually was just looking at that because I was studying the different globes and the globes that they use, that they still are using in the school system in certain areas. They contested those different globes and trying to use another globe that I can't remember that had actually the sizes of Africa. You know what I'm saying? Because most of those globes, you look at Africa and South America, is small, and they blow up Europe and Asia and these other continents, but make Africa and South America look small. So I know exactly who you're talking about.
Well, I bring up this one because I I think they call it the Earth apple.
Mm-hmm.
And the Americas, well, the Western Hemisphere is not on this globe. They'll argue that he knew about it and Christopher Columbus was back, but he had already put this globe into production before this discovery.
Mm-hmm.
I'll see if I can put something in the chat on it.
Yeah, put that in the chat because I never heard of that, so that would be interesting. I know, if I'm correct, the Arabs got this ideology from Ptolemy, if I'm correct. And we all know Ptolemy from the invader of Egypt. Yeah, we all.
Yeah, that's like one of your first real major scientific debates during the Enlightenment period was the Platonic theory versus the Earth being the Platonic was the Earth being the center of the universe versus us breaking into realizing that we eclipsed the sun. That goes into Galileo. He had a big part of it. And all these, what's crazy is all these stories correlate with each other. I don't want to take away from your bill. We'll get into this another time.
Oh no, you're cool. You cool, bro. But okay, let me get back into it. Europeans then are seen as unbaked or half-baked, and Africans as burnt. But while the authors seem to hold only the Europeans' color against them, his description of Africans reveal prejudices which go beyond color and are formulated by racial stereotypes. The 14th century Syrian writer and geographer al-Dimashqi echoes some of these prejudices. And we'll go into his quote in the next slide. Okay, al-Dimashqi says, the equatorial region is inhabited by communities of blacks who are to be numbered among the savages and beasts. Their complexion and hair are burnt, and they are physically and morally deviant. Their brains almost boil from the sun's excessive heat. The human being who dwells there is a cruel fellow with a very black complexion, burnt hair, unruly, with stinking sweat, and an abnormal constitution, most closely resembling in his moral qualities a savage or animals. He cannot dwell in the second zone, let alone the third and fourth, just as people in the first zone do not live in the sixth, nor those of the sixth in the first, or the equatorial region, because of the difference in the quantity and the quality of air and the heat of the sun. God knows best. Next slide. Okay, later he expands upon this. We shall now give an account of what has been said about the inhabitants of the seven zones in regard to their physique and their moral qualities, and the reason for this. The first zone is from the equator, extending to what lies beyond it and behind it. It contains the following nations: the Zanj, the Sudan, the Abasha, the Nuba, etc. Their blackness is due to the sun. Since its heat is extreme, it rises over them and is directly over their heads twice a year and remains close to them. It gives them a burning heat, and their hair, pursuant to the natural processes, becomes jet black, curly, and peppercorn-like, closely resembling hair that has been brought close to a fire and until it has been scorched. The most convincing proof that it has been scorched is that it does not grow any longer. We know that sounds crazy, as long as my hair is. Their skins are hairless and smooth. since the sun cleans the filth from their bodies and draws it out. Their brains have little humidity for similar reasons, and hence their intelligence is dim. Their thoughts are not sustained, and their minds are inflexible. So that opposites, such as good faith and deceit, honesty and treachery, do not coexist among them. No divinely revealed laws have been found among them, nor has any divine messenger been sent among them, for they are incapable of handling opposites together, whereas divine laws consist of commanding and forbidding, and creating desire and fear. The moral characteristics found in their belief system are close to the instincts found naturally in animals, which require no learning to bring them out of the realm of potentiality into that of reality, like the braveness to be found in a lion and the cunning in a fox. Next slide. If you pay attention to that, though, that led the end of that quote, it kind of has some truth to it. How our systems, our spiritual systems, and our concepts, a lot of them are based off of the observation of animals. I mean, you know, they look down on that, but the other outside foreigners like to put themselves above animals. But as African people, we know we are all God's creation, if you want to say that. We are all on the same level. We are all the same. We all come from the same source. We don't like to separate ourselves from nature. That is Asians and Europeans and Eurasians. That's their concepts. So yes, we did in our spiritual systems and our concepts of life and our culture, we did look to animals to find things out, even as they do today, even as the government does today.
Yeah, it's sad that our family still does the same thing today. A lot of our family members separate ourselves from nature. We think that we are superior than the animals, that we can't learn anything from the animal, but those are people that are indoctrinated and illiterate. I mean, I have talked about this in numerous meetings and numerous presentations, you know, dealing with the animals and what we learn from the animals, like an example of looking at the ant and the termite. Our ancestors learned how to build out of mud from looking at the ant and the termite building their mounds. So we learn by looking at the animal, we learn how to build mud brick or build specifically I'm talking about in Kemet, the Persian jet, what they call the mastaba, which is an Arabic word which means bench, which later on became the step pyramid, a stack of benches, which became later on the flat surface pyramids.
Right. Right. And it's instances today where I've seen on videos where the government, how they study certain animals and certain insects to formulate certain tactics, like certain war tactics, certain flight tactics. We still look at animals today. So as you said, man, there's just indoctrinated people. There's people that's still thinking with a Western mind, a Europeanized mind, to try to separate yourself from animals or separate yourself from nature. But let me get back into it. Hold on 1 second.
Okay, this is a new slide here. Satek, you hadn't even started on this.
Okay, yeah, that's right. Hold on, give me 1 second.
Hey, Kofi.
Go ahead.
Yeah, when you was speaking on the master bar and stuff like that, you remember when I put in the chat, I had to school somebody, I had to school a European.
Mm-hmm.
I was giving them same examples.
Yeah.
I was breaking it down. Everything you said, I broke it down the exact same way. Like even when you go later in the dynasties when they started building the Valley of the Kings, you know, they was digging into the rock face and they was they following what the animal does, you know, because if you look at an ant mound, it's the same thing. Like, you know, people be having little ant farms
Mm-hmm.
and they building tunnels and stuff in there, man. So
Right.
the Africans, we don't. The difference between the European and the African is we study the animal. They actually lived with the animal, and that's why they want to separate themselves because they know they lived with the animal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay. In an attempt to grapple with some of these stereotypes and explain them in more scientific fashion, Ibn Khaldun had this to say: "We have seen that the Negroes are in general characterized by levity, excitability, and great emotionalism. They are found to dance wherever they hear a melody. They are everywhere described as stupid." Al-Masudi undertook to investigate the reason for this. However, he did no better than to report on the authority of Al-Kindi and Julinus, or whatever the bro name is, that the reason is a weakness of their brains, which result in the weakness of their influence they exert upon the air and upon the creatures that come into being in it. Next slide. Okay, this is where we touch on a problem with the climate concept that Ibn Khaldun had, and basically all of the Arabs. For anybody that was Arab, you should have had a problem with this concept, and we'll get into it. For Ibn Khaldun, there were two problems. First, he knew both from his personal experience and historical investigation that his theory about the barbarism of Black Africans simply did not hold water. He gathered a great deal of information about the kingdom of Mali and had met men who had close contacts with the great ruler of Mali, Mansa Musa, during his 14th century pilgrimage. Excuse me. He also met other West Africans in various places in North Africa, including emissaries of rulers, and could not dismiss them as barbarous. Secondly, and I think the most importantly, the Arabian Peninsula, home of the Arabs and cradle of Islam, lay partly in the first zone and partly in the second zone, regions that were supposed to be by reason of their harsh climate zones. Hold on, let me back that up. Secondly, the Arabian Peninsula, home of the Arabs, cradle of Islam, lay partly in the first zone, partly in the second zone, regions that were supposed to be, by reason of their harsh climates, zones of barbarism whose people were remote from civilization and humanity. So basically, he realized that the Arabian Peninsula, none of it is in the fourth zone. They in the first zone and the second zone. And this is why Arabs are so dark. The Arabian Peninsula is in that first and second zone of those hotter climates. That's why you see all those dark Arabs. they're still Arabs. That don't mean that they're African. It's the purebred ones, because you did have some that mixed with African women. Because we got to remember the Arab slave trade, they mostly took women. So they would take these women as slaves and they would mix with them. So you have a lot of half-breeds. But even the purebred dark Arabs, they are just as I said, purebred dark Arabs. But they come from Arabia's, and that would have been in that second and first climate zone, where the hotter in the equatorial region, basically. So, I mean, you couldn't use that theory. This is the home of Islam. This is the cradle of the Arabs. So how could you use that theory when it kind of contradicts everything that you stand for? So next slide. All right. Racial ideologies of the 15th century Iberia developed from African slavery since the 8th century. From 711 to 1492, Muslims controlled a significant portion of the Iberian Peninsula. In many respects, wide-ranging influence profoundly affected Iberian thinking and charted racial hierarchies. By the 9th century, Muslims made clear distinctions of black slaves, which they would call abd, ABD, for singular, and abid, ABID, for plural. And the white slaves would be called mamluks. White slaves were worth more, as they could bring a substantial Christian ransom or be traded for a Muslim captive. This shows relative worth in white and black. In the Arab world, the Abid was made to do all back-breaking work, whereas the Mamluk was an investment. Black Africans toiled under the worst conditions, while white slaves were usually house servants. Free blacks, who were also called Abid, without the legal stigma. So they called free blacks under the title of slave too, but even though they were free, that goes back to the concept of natural slavery. Free blacks, who are also called Abid without the legal stigma, were limited to menial occupations like butcher and bath attendants. Free black women worked as washerwomen and prostitutes. Now, this is in Spain. So remember what I said about the paintings of black people being shown doing the smallest, most worthless task that it is, sweep. Moors might show a picture of black people sweeping, and they'd be like, "Yeah, look, we rule Spain." Or just like the image that I got on the left side right here of a white woman being washed by a black woman. As it said, the free black women a lot of them worked as washerwomen or prostitutes. And the obviously the white prostitutes were worth more than the black prostitutes. And I think I put something in there. I had to limit myself because it's so much that I could have put into this. So I think I added something on that, but we'll see. We can go to the next slide. The common thread binding Muslim and Christian racial imagery was as much rejection of blackness as much as it was the outcome of the lighter-skinned ruling class desire to protect its position of superiority by celebrating their civility. All of these blacks or their ancestors arrived at Iberia as slaves, and their blackness was an immutable badge of inferiority. That's natural slavery. Well, I wouldn't say there's natural slavery, the inferiority complex. When they call black people slave, even if you were free, they would call you slave. That comes from that concept of natural slavery. This the concept of inferiority or superiority, which the Iberians got from the Arab, this is more of a modern prejudice. This is where you start to see the beginnings of modern racism, modern prejudiceness against black people. Negative racial stereotypes crystallize in the minds. Negative racial stereotypes crystallize in white minds over time, as suggested by Arab constructions, religious assumptions, and literary records. Blacks were always seen as morally and culturally inferior. Light-skinned Muslims along the West African coast ignored their own religious canon by enslaving black Muslims. They ignored Islam and everything they stood for just to enslave free black Muslims, which you weren't supposed to be doing. In 1392, the Black King of Bornu, which is in present-day northern Nigeria, wrote the Sultan of Egypt protesting the pillage of his lands and the enslavement of his peoples. Even though his people were free Muslims, the Arabs took people as merchandise and sold them as to slave dealers. In his appeal, the king noted that his nation was founded by an Arab, therefore proving his people's Muslim authenticity. Arab Muslims illegally enslaving black Muslims persisted through the 16th and 17th centuries, even into the 19th century in West Africa. The next slide. All right. Ibn Hazm describes an unflattering episode of Abd al-Rahman III's life, including the presumably humorous use of black children hanged as counterweights from a well. Abd al-Rahman al-Nasir was not far from his grandfather, al-Hakam ibn Hazm, in the way he threw himself into sin and committed doubtful acts, abusing his subjects, giving himself cynically to pleasure, punishing with cruelty, and caring little for the effusion of blood. He was the one who hanged the sons of blacks from the well of his palace as a sort of counterweight to draw water, making them die. So dude was so raw with it, but they call us savages. You know, dude was so raw with it that he would hang black children from his well as a counterweight to bring up water, hang them until they died. And this was, I guess, entertainment for him. Next slide. Now, that is the meat of my presentation. I just felt that I needed to throw a couple of extra quotes out there because, like I said, I had to limit myself because it's so much that I could have put in here. So many quotes, so many stories, so many ideologies that I would have went forever, or I probably had to do a part 2. So, which may end up coming, but I just wanted to throw a couple of quotes out there at the end just to drive the point home. This is Al-Jahiz. Al-Jahiz said, "We know that the Zanj are the least intelligent and the least discerning of mankind and the least capable of understanding the consequences of actions." Al-Jahiz also said, "They, the Shu'ubaya, maintain that eloquence is prized by all people at all times, even the Zanj, despite their dimness, Their boundless stupidity, their obtuseness, their crude perceptions, and their evil dispositions make long speeches. And one more time, Al Jahiz says, like the crow among mankind are the Zanj, for they are the worst of men and the most vicious of creatures in character and temperament. So Al Jahiz had a lot to say about black people. You can go to the next slide. Now we're going to Ibn Qutayba, and he says blacks are ugly and misshapen because they live in a hot country. That's pretty scientific. Al-Muqaddasi says of the neighbors of the Buja, which he were referring, he calls them the Buja, he was referring to the Beja. Of the neighbors of the Buja, Magdishi had heard that there is no marriage among them. The child does not know his father, and they eat people, but God knows best. As for the Zanj, they are people of black color, flat noses, kinky hair, and little understanding or intelligence. Next slide. Ibn Sina says blacks are people who are by their very nature slaves. And I mean, he just laid it out. I've been speaking on natural slavery this whole presentation, and he just laid it out. Blacks are people who are by their very nature slaves. That's the concept of natural slavery. Nasir al-Din al-Tusi says all types of men are taking karma like the Negro from Zanzibar in the southernmost countries. The Negro does not differ from an animal in anything except the fact that his hands have been lifted from the earth and other peculiar I can never say that word, or property, except for what God wished. Many have seen that the ape is more capable of being trained than the Negro and more intelligent. So Nasir al-Din says Negroes are no different than animals. The only difference from a Negro and an animal is that we can walk upright, basically. Our hands have been lifted from the earth. So we can stand up straight, walk upright. That's the only difference between the Negro of Africa and the animals. And Nasir al-Din's mind. And he says the ape is more capable of being trained than the Negro and more intelligent. That lets you know the thought process. I pay attention to some of the things or some of how people say certain things, not so much of what they say but how they say it. The Negro, the ape is more capable of being trained than the Negro. Why would you have to train a human being? This is crazy. But you can go to the next slide, which I think should be my last slide. Okay. Ibn Khaldun said, the Negro nations are, as a rule, submissive to slavery because the Negroes have little that is essentially human and have attributes that are quite similar to those of dumb animals, as we have stated. And this is the dude that remixed the climate theory, the 7-zone climate theory. This is the same guy. Beyond known peoples, Black West Africa, to the south, there is no civilization in the proper sense. There are only humans who are closer to dumb animals than to rational beings. They live in thickets and caves and eat herbs and unprepared grains. They frequently eat each other. They cannot be considered human beings. So again, you see why I feel the way I do about the European getting the concept of this of modern racism or modern prejudiceness from the Arab. As you see, they say they cannot be considered as human beings. We know the Europeans said that of us, but a lot of us don't know that the Arabs said that of us first. So this is the main reason why I put this presentation together, because a lot of us give them a break. A lot of us just don't know this information. So the next slide will be my sources, my references, and that is it. That is it for me.
Yeah, I'm finna throw your slide over. That's just crazy.
Man,
I
where the
mean,
sources at,
this
man?
presentation kind of set up.
Talking to Kofi,
Shut
man.
up, Sean. I'm gonna get to it. I'm gonna get to it. Mute your mic,
I've been
sir.
quiet
Mute
this
your mic,
whole
sir.
time, man. I ain't said not one word.
We appreciate it. I know I do. If don't nobody else appreciate it, I appreciate it. I appreciate it. But anyway,
I appreciate you putting the next slide up.
Anyway, see, something made me forget what I was finna say, man. Me throw
It wasn't important.
Yeah,
it wasn't important.
Yeah, man. Hopefully somebody learns something from this today, because I know a lot of us don't really know. You know, this is a subject I ain't really talked about that much. So that's why I wanted to put it out there.
Yeah, and we don't know how to read Arabic. It'd be good if we knew how to read Arabic. We can get right into the primaries and pull and kind of verify what some of the Arab sources are saying. But that's a tough one, though. You know what I mean? Just trying to learn Arabic. But I think I may have a plug that might be able to help. So
well, we had one.
Nah, I got one. Remember, Coach,
but we had one. You ran them off.
I don't care nothing about him.
You
but I got a Cairo connect. You know what I mean? It's from Cairo, you know, and I'm gonna see if I can get some primaries that I can get them to translate for me and see if we can deal with it like that. But then I still be appealing to authority, because then I'll be depending on this person to translate that information correctly. So I still need to try to learn it.
Yeah, they say Arabic is a very hard language to learn, especially for native English speakers. So I'm learning Spanish, but that's supposed to be a level 1 language for native English speakers, because it got so many cognates and similar sounding words. But Arabic is totally different.
Yeah, you on your own on that one, man. I think I'm gonna just stick to these African languages. I really don't want to learn the Arabic stuff. I get mad, but it'll be good to know some basic stuff though when we get into some of these texts, because we got to deal with the Arabic sources when we start really getting into a lot of other parts of West Africa.
Yeah, you got to. You got to, because, I mean, what else you going to deal with, especially dealing with the earliest writings of West Africa? You got to go to the
Arabs. Yep. Here is a slide.
Oh, don't nobody care what you got coming soon, man. We talking about Sutek right now. We don't care nothing about Kofi.
No. Anyway, yeah, that's what I was gonna say, man. That kind of set up, like you mentioned, like, and it's sad. Some of this is why I put this together here. Actually, 2 of them, the presentations, you kind of set both of the presentations up with a lot of the racial slurs about Africans and the way they perceive Africans, the way they think of Africans, and a statement about them not being human. So one of my presentations has something to deal with what do Africans consider to, I can't remember, but it's something in what Africans consider to be human beings. So a person or a human being, the perspective of the African is different than what we consider a person of a human being is. I forgot the name of the presentation, but that's coming soon. And this in here is coming soon here. What is the first thing that pops in your mind when you think of Africa, and what do Africa offer to help sustain other countries? And I know most of the time, and we talk to some of our just some people on the street, or some of our family members, or some of our co-workers, or some of our close family or friends. You know, when you mention Africa, you know, they'll be thinking some of the same things. You know, Africans are ugly, Africans are primitive. Africans is not intelligent. You can train a dog faster than, you know. It's so, you know, we have those same uh, negative and ugly perceptions about our own ancestors because of, you know, the school system, uh, the religion that we was brought up in, just things that we hear, random conversation with other individuals in our family or co-workers. So, you know, we take on this perception as Africa being ugly, Africa being poor, the people in Africa is not smart, they are primitive, and etc. So with this presentation, like I'm saying, I'm asking a question, what pops up in your mind? So I'm going to show two different sides of what pops up in some of the unstudied minds, which most of we are surrounded around, and those that may be a little versed in African studies, or just versed in knowledge itself, or just versed in history uh, all together. So I'm gonna show you two different sides and show you that Africa is not poor and how they sustain other countries, you know, by the different minerals that grow inside the ground. So be on the lookout for that presentation coming soon. It's gonna be a lot of I'm gonna say a lot of powerful information, some information that you may not have seen, a lot of information that you may not have heard, some information that you may not know what is actually going on in Africa, what they are manufacturing in Africa right now, and so forth. So be on the lookout for that presentation that's coming soon to Kofi Paisai TV, and that other one about what do Africans think of human beings or a person. I forgot the name of the presentation. Excuse me for forgetting the name of it. It's a long name too. So be on the lookout for that on Moxie Warrior Clan channel coming real soon. So anybody got anything else?
There was a couple questions in the chat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I got some stuff, you know, just for the listening audience as well, and a few questions.
Okay.
It's not from them,
but brother said, which hold on. It says, brother Fitness. He says, which means at this time the Ottomans controlled Islam. So I guess he's saying during the presentation, he sounds like a statement, but he got a question mark behind it. So I don't know. But I don't get why people do that. They make a statement with a question mark. And then another brother said, Brother Mathis, he said, how are we separating these people? Jews, Greeks, Arabs, Europeans, Russians, Asians, Syrians, Iraqis, Romans. How are they different? So what do you say to that, Brother Sutek? How are these people different?
Well, I would say they're different because they see themselves as different. They have different cultures. They might all have adapted the same religion, but they come from different places. They have different cultures. They a lot of them spoke different languages before the coming of Islam. I mean, different people are different people. That's just like saying or Japanese.
You're breaking up on us, Sutek. We done lost him. He's still, you know, I can't see him still sharing screen.
Let's see. He's in here, but I don't see.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now. You went out on us.
Okay, I was saying, I don't think I quite understand the question. He's asking, how are they different?
I mean, I feel like you was breaking it down good because, like you said, they see themselves as different. I get what the brother's saying at the same time. He basically saying they all white, they all European. We get that, you know. We're not saying that they not, but if you breaking it down, they are different, you know, based off their culture, based on the landmass that they live on. That's just like if you go to Africa, all Africans ain't the same. You know, you got the West Africans, people in Mali, people in Ghana, you got people in Nigeria, and then you got people on the east side, you got Kenya, you know, these are all different they all Africans, but they all different. So I hope go ahead.
Can I try to reframe that question to make it more conducive to this conversation? How should we view our relationship with the said different groups? The Russians, I can't remember what all he wrote down, but how should we view our relationship with these different groups?
Man, we have no friends.
There you go. I think
John Henry Clark said.
I think that would be a more conducive answer to stay on topic. Because obviously, you know, we can easily point out different cultures, different beliefs, and etc. But to keep it in the subject of this topic, it would be for the listening audience, how should we view our relationship, both past, present, and future, with these different groups of the world? That would make more sense to pose that question.
I would say never forget. Never forget. I mean, you know, we have to live with these people. We have to live around different ethnicities and different races. I mean, you know, I just want people to never forget, because a lot of us are stuck on Christianity, and a lot of us will run from Christianity and go right to Islam. But I mean, this is a bunch of people that did this to you and that feel this way about you. So never forget.
You made a statement about cannibalism. Has anybody found any proof of that taking place? I just want to clear that up now.
Who made a statement about cannibalism?
Didn't one of them say that they eat people?
Yeah, one of them did make that statement in one of the slides. He did make that. I mean, and that's not the first time. I even heard that from our own people, that we were cannibals. You know, we ate each other. You know what I'm saying? I'm saying these are the things I heard coming up as a little boy. You know what I'm saying? Some of these same ugly sayings about Africa, you know, and the people that live in Africa. But yeah, he did one of those slides did one of those Arabs did say something about that.
Because I don't want anybody to walk away from this thinking that was taking place if it wasn't.
I'm pretty sure it was in, you know, somewhere, just like I'm pretty sure homosexuality was taking place somewhere, but was it accepted overall as a part of African culture? I wouldn't agree with that.
Right. I'm in agreement with him. There was cannibal. I'm not gonna say that there was not cannibalism, because we know there was cannibalism, because cannibalism exists. If you don't never do something, that thing does not exist. So it happened. It wasn't a common practice, and I think it came from a certain war tactic, to where you devour your enemy. The term you devour your enemy and gain their power.
Yeah, that sounds more of your Spartans ideology. Drinking their blood and chewing on them and etc. Going to battle naked and all that other stuff. They was on something.
Oh, so you must not never heard of the guy. It's the general. It's an African general that they call him butt naked or something. You might want to look into that. He go to war butt naked.
General butt naked.
Yeah,
but I don't think he.
I heard of that.
I swear to God, look it up, bro.
I heard of it.
I don't think he was running up on his first person of contact with the intentions to rape, eat, and drink their blood.
I don't know what his intentions was, but I know it's.
Yeah.
Go ahead and go to YouTube, look it on up. You can see what I'm talking about.
Yummy. My bad.
Nah, you good. Go ahead.
He wanted somebody to see what he was doing. We know you finna eat. We know you finna eat German Shepherd. You finna eat a German Shepherd.
Man, Kobe, it's okay. You know what I mean? You gotta have your day, bro. Go ahead and have your day.
Grilled German Shepherd. We know that's what you finna eat.
I know you gotta have your day, bro. Go ahead and have your day. It's understandable. You see them vegetables over there? That's what I'm gonna be eating.
Grilled German Shepherd.
Okay, look. The people in the chat know what I'm talking about, Vasa.
Deep fried rat tail. We got you.
Nah. Them vegetables, that's me. You understand me? Cook me up, bro.
Oh, I guess somebody heard on brother.
Yeah.
That's a real thing.
Balbo. Excuse me, brother, if I'm torturing your name, but he said General Butt Naked from Liberia. Pull up the Civil War in Liberia. I'm definitely gonna look that up.
Yeah, look that up, man. I ain't playing. You know I ain't gonna say it if it ain't a fact.
Yeah.
But the question, if we're gonna stay on that subject, whose birthday is it? Happy birthday to whoever that is. Happy day to the family, whoever it may be. But now the question comes, what is the ideology behind it? Is he going to war to say, I'm going just natural head first as myself? I don't need no weapons. I don't need no gear. Is it that ideology, or is it?
Well, I was the one that made the statement. I said it's a war tactic.
Mm-hmm.
It's a war tactic. So cannibalism is a war tactic. Fighting. You brought up fighting naked, and I said it's actual documented evidence of this that's done took place in our lifetime. And I gave you an example. It's a war tactic. Now the reason behind it, you got to ask him. We don't know the reason behind why. Well, they go into it in the documentary, but you got to watch it, Vasa.
Yeah, I'll check it out. You know me, I love it. I love information. I just, want to kind of keep the chat going, see if we can get people in here and throw out food for thought. I do have a question for Sutek, though. You mentioned a king around, what was it, 1392, if I'm not mistaken. You said in Nigeria, writing a complaint. Did you, in that time frame, did you study anything that was going on the east coast of Africa pertaining Arabs enslaving Africans? Because at that time, they shipping them as far as China. If I'm not mistaken, 1381, there's recorded evidence of at least 300 being shipped at once to China.
Yeah, I didn't really go into I didn't really want to touch too much on the slavery aspect.
Let me rephrase. Did you look into anything that was taking place? It don't necessarily have to be slavery, but is there anything do they have a foothold on the East Coast as well? Africa. Just for the audience.
That's why they talk about the Zanj, who are in East Africa, and the Habash, who are in East Africa, because they are dealing with those people. They are enslaving them people, trading with them people, and the same thing they was doing in West Africa. They was doing in East Africa.
Mm-hmm.
They was just doing it in East Africa first.
Yeah. And I'm just asking, for clarity for the audience, so they don't think it was just a regional ordeal.
Oh no, they was all up and through Africa. It was all up and through Africa.
Any more questions in there before I end the show? I'm definitely gonna look at the General Butt Naked. General Butt Naked.
Yeah, man, I heard about General Butt Naked.
Yeah,
I don't see anything going on.
I'm about to put it in the Kofi in the YouTube group.
All right.
It's called The Redemption of General Butt Naked.
All right. Yeah, I'll check that out later on. Yeah, I don't see any more questions, man, in the chat, man. We appreciate, man, everybody tuning in, listening to what my brother Sutek had to present today. This was a nice presentation. I learned something today. I hope y'all learned something as well. And we'll see y'all. Oh, brother said he's still alive. He's still alive too. Brother Balboa say he's still alive.
Mm.
Yeah, I'm about to check him out.
Kofi, we did post some on General Butt Nigga before, I think.
I don't remember.
I think I did, but it might be on my Facebook page,
Yeah,
not on the light page.
I would like to take from Dave Chappelle at the moment and
This
title this segment "When Keeping It Scholarly Goes Wrong." There's some stuff I just don't want to know.
We gotta embrace that. We gotta embrace the bad with the good.
Right. Like Kofi said. Like Kofi said all the time on the Mossy channel. We don't separate.
Right.
Because
all right, well, y'all watch it, and when you get done, y'all give me the PG-13 version.
Yeah, but what he did was he went to war with him. He you know what I mean? That was his tactic. That was his war tactic.
I'm gonna call you right back, Zach. I'm on my YouTube channel.
Yep, I remember looking at Butt Naked, man.
And you know what? Y'all remember the General Comey, I think it was?
Nah, I ain't never heard of him.
Man, that's what got me looking into it, man, because they said he had one of the brothers just reminded me talking about the child soldiers. He had a whole bunch of children that was fighting wars for him. And the General Comey too. I'm gonna put that in there too for y'all, man. Y'all need to look up these modern generals, man, and see how they was getting down, they war tactics and stuff.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna check it out, man. But shoot, yeah, man, we'll see y'all, man. Next week we'll be back next week with another tweet. Possibly you'll be through next week, or you need me to go, or you what
Kofi, you on deck. You know, I'm in busy mode right now, man. I'm on the back end of that closing.
Well, yeah, I'll be on the monster then. I already got that. I got to finish that presentation about the human beings in person, but
but September Rock. You see what I posted? I did it on the 18th of September 2 years ago. Well, a year ago.
On your page?
Yeah. It was on my page.
Yeah, but Vasa, what's you gonna be ready next week, or you need a little bit more time? Just trying to let the people know what we got going on next week.
I'll build with you throughout the week. I mean, we can keep promoting these ideas and let them know it's coming. Okay. I don't mind that. I don't mind that at all. I'm still going to do the Cimarron project regardless. I am trying to get my hands, Kofi, as you know, on a couple of primaries that they're doing down in these places, you know, Colombia, Panama, and a few other regions. I'm waiting to get word back from that, and give me till Wednesday. If I don't hear anything from that, then I'll just deadline it to do it Sunday, or we'll pick a date from there.
Yeah. Just let me know, because that was another reason too. I went on and did that one. I showed up there just in case. I actually did it just in case Brother Sutek went to sleep on me, or indulging in too many activities and overslept or got sick and then wasn't gonna come on today. So I kind of went on ahead and put that thing there together. But yeah, we'll
because I showed you those other two, right? I mean, I could still use those and maybe use the trailer. The trailer from the first one would just be a good way to just kind of give the visual to people. But those other two that I sent you, the visuals, yeah. I think those speak volume within themselves. That even goes into a discussion earlier from today about the language barrier of us coming to the Western Hemisphere and creating languages.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but just y'all be on the lookout. We'll be back though Sunday. Be on the lookout on the Mossy Warrior Clan channel. I don't know what the name of that presentation is. I forgot the name of it, but tune in 2 p.m. I may come on a little early, maybe 1 p.m. We'll see, but just be on the lookout on the Monster Warrior Clan channel. I'll be presenting on the Monster Warrior Clan channel at 2 p.m. And we'll be coming back at 6 p.m. on Kofi Pieside TV. It may be Brother Vasa. If not Brother Vasa, I'll be doing that presentation that I posted up doing this presentation today. Again, we appreciate y'all for tuning in to the channel. We'll see y'all next week, man. And Black African Power, family. Look at all that dog that man got on that plate over there. That man got some. Look at it. Look at that. Stir fried. He got stir fried rat tail. Look at that.
When man becomes possessor over the knowledge of himself, he becomes master of his environment and captain of his own ship, the director of his own destiny, the accomplisher of his own ends. Man should understand himself because man is full of knowledge, and this knowledge is a gift of nature. When Mother Nature created man, she deprived him of nothing. He was given the faculty of understanding all things around him. This faculty for understanding has not been taken away from him. None of his senses have been taken away from him. So there is no excuse for the black man.
I'm breathing my team, red, black, and green, queens and kings, salute, now scream, I should, spring, I should, I'm ripping my team, red, black, and green, queens and kings, salute, now scream, I should, spring, I should,
Right now, Black Power.